Morning guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far, major roster updates coming through last night after Vancouver Surge made so many grand finals last year. Many expected that if the team was to totally blow up, as it has, all of those guys would end up on other top organizations going into next year. That may be true in part, but certainly not true, it seems, in whole. Big rumors that Nastie will end up on Boston for next year, and that's raised big questions as to what Toronto are cooking up to round their team out as well. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Today, pretty sure today, is the multiplayer, well, Trek literally said, don't they, yesterday. So anyway, it's the multiplayer reveal trailer. So they've got a couple of little teasers in here of some of the new weapons, some of the new maps, just to have a quick look at what's going on. We've got some sort of drum shotgun. This, of course, is here on Raid, right in the mid-map here. So the new, like, Japanese style thing they've got going on. This is clearly another map. This is another map. So anyway, just a little teaser of what we're going to have this evening to see if anything's actually going to be any good or not. The weaponry, I don't know, looks pretty tasty to me. We'll see tonight whether the game looks any better than people expect it to be so far. Of course, the maps are going to be a major thing. We did talk yesterday about the map pool so far in the CDL era. Modern Warfare 2, you guys are mentioning, you know, Hotel, Greenberg wasn't a bad map either. Modern Warfare 3, it was kind of a funny one because it started out as a terrible map pool, in my opinion. I know that some of us maybe have a bit of a hot spot for a soft spot for high-rise control or something, you know, the propane tanks and all that type of stuff. Wasn't really a massive fan of that. I actually don't think, I quite enjoyed watching Terminal. It was problematic, you know, Terminal Search. It wasn't a great map, but I didn't hate watching it, to be fair. Wasn't really a big fan of watching much Invasion. Sub-base hardpoints, I don't know, it wasn't great, but anyway, the original map set in that game definitely left a little bit to be desired, and then they brought in that one update, really, bringing in Rio, bringing in 6-star, and then Vista arrived as well, that really changed the tide. So we'll see if we get a similar kind of selection here, because in many respects, Black Ops 7 could be kind of similar. There's a few throwback maps coming through, but also some newer maps. We'll see if they still know how to design a solid map, I suppose. And yeah, Rio and 6-star, definitely a good combination. But let's dive back into some of the Rostermania stuff, because it's been a question now how these teams are going to round out. We don't know, at least as of recording, what Thieves are cooking up yet. We know that FaZe confirmed their team the other day, and that's relevant when we discuss the Surge guys here in a couple of seconds' time. So let's just talk about Toronto real quick, what they're going to do, how they're looking to round out their team. Because there was all that drama with Heretics when they eventually went and got Real. Heretics tried to hold on to him. Toronto came on with a bigger offer. There was all sorts of talk about whether Heretics were going to be able to match that or not. We had aBeZy getting involved because Toronto are now Koi. It's going to be Toronto Koi. We think it's going to be a rebrand. While FaZe Vegas are becoming Vegas and they're becoming pink. I mean, Toronto were always purple, but, you know, it was kind of a pinky purple sometimes. Anyway, they're not going to be that anymore. They're probably just going to be Koi, the team they represented at the World Cup, and they might go away entirely from that type of branding. So that's expected. We know that they're combining more heavily with Koi and aBeZy and the Spanish side of the organization. They wanted Real. They went and got him, right? Heretics said, we want to keep you if you leave XYZ. They had a verbal agreement from him, but Koi gave him a better offer. So he took the deal. There was all sorts of drama, and that was now locked in. But they wanted him before, right? Even last season, Toronto wanted Real. It should have been expected from Heretics' perspective that Toronto were going to try and give it a go to get him. This time they did. As a result of that, Heretics have signed Trakes, Argentinian player, to replace him. We're pretty sure the rest of that team is going to be the same. Rancor, Super, Metals, rounding out the roster. So Real will join Toronto alongside JoeDeceives. That's now been locked in, right? It's Real, it's JoeDeceives, it's CleanX looking for one. So CleanX expected to go to the flex role on that roster, and then they've got a couple of SMGs in Joe and Real. I like the direction that they're building in. Still feels a little strange for me to have CleanX on the flex. It's like, you know, kind of putting aBeZy on the flex. I'm sure he could make it work. Maybe not. You're not making the best use of his talents. I think there's an argument there. But they tried it at the World Cup because they brought in Abe, and it worked out rather well. CleanX looked good. Insight looked kind of better, I would say. So, you know, I think Insight actually does thrive a little more when he feels like he can play at a slightly quicker pace. And maybe with CleanX's AR combination, that's more able to be happening. We saw when Mercules came in, and they tried that for a little while when Beans couldn't make it. Insight played a bit quicker, Just because I think that Toronto team, when Mercules came in, and even what they did at the World Cup, they were slightly more free-flowing, right? They didn't have a structure that they'd worked on for months, so it was like, all right, let's just go out and do our thing. Insight played a bit quicker, and I think it worked out better for him. So the expected roster in early August was this: JoeDeceives, Real, CleanX, Insight. But then all of a sudden, this changed around because Insight announced that he was an unrestricted free agent a couple of days later. So, and there was all sorts of talk that actually, no, Toronto have changed their minds. They're looking at other options. Let's not forget there was all those rumours around Drazah and Kenny potentially going to Toronto as well. So there was a few things happening here, but a couple of days before, there were rumours that Insight was set to stay and this was going to be the team of 4. Then a couple of days later, this tweet, Insight, I mean, it's still up there, unrestricted free agent. Now, does that mean that Toronto cannot necessarily re-sign him? No, and that always felt like a reasonably good chance of that happening, but many did question CleanX and Insight. They've been a duo now for basically their entire career, and people have wondered, okay, is that, how long is that going to last? Is that going to change at some point? They played together on that Singularity team back in the day where CleanX first got noticed. And then moving more recently, Insight when he came in during Cold War, I mean, to be honest, it's been quite a long time, right? If you think about it, aBeZy and Simp, they played together for near enough 6 years. That now stands as the record. But Insight and CleanX, they started playing at middle of 2021, and we're now, 4.5 years on from that. So, look, if they play together for another couple of seasons, they could be the longest teaming duo ever. They're not all that far away, which is kind of crazy to think about. But, look, maybe at some point it will end, but it doesn't look like it's going to end yet, right? We did wonder, CleanX is kind of the golden boy of Toronto, whether he was finally going to decide, okay, it's not really worked out with Insight the last couple of years, not got the results that we wanted, so maybe it's time to move on and try a different AR. And he was out of contract. If Toronto wanted to get somebody else who was also out of contract, it was absolutely a possibility. But over the last couple of weeks, things have been more leaning in the direction of Insight probably returning. He's been tweeting out some pictures with aBeZy, with some of the other Toronto guys that have been happening with JoeDeceives. Then he did, some other tweets over the last couple of days as well. So, whatever's happening there, it seems more and more likely that Insight potentially returning. But there were other options out there that could be considered, such as, let's say, Nastie. So Ronnie comes out with the article last night discussing how Nastie, we think, is set to join Boston. Now, this is, I think, very interesting, and I actually really like the Boston team. I just feel like this is a little surprising on the surface, given what's happened with Surge last year. Surge made a ton of finals. Nastie was a crucial member of that team last season. Was he their best player? I think you would argue that Neptune was probably Surge's best player. He came in and had loads of impact for that team. But he's not getting picked up by FaZe as we thought he might, or I think even Neptune was probably trying to get on Thieves, and we know that he was trying to Neptune have a few conversations around about the World Cup after what happened at Champs to try and see if he could find himself, maybe even before Champs ended, I don't know, because the Surge guys knew that was not going to last. They didn't want to stay playing out of Vancouver, number one. That's a problem. Like, they would much prefer to be in Texas and give themselves a better chance online and all this stuff. That was number one. Secondly, they were going to necessarily demand some higher numbers to make it work because other organizations were going to come through and pump those numbers up. And I think it was pretty clear to that team, even before the season ended, that the Surge roster was going to totally disband going into the upcoming year. Even had they won, I don't know if it would have made much difference to the state of the way that organization and the team was. So they knew they were parting ways. Neptune took matters into his own hands, and he tried to do a little bit of, digging around to see what opportunities might be available. We think he's ending up on the Gentlemates team, which should be a pretty competitive team. Envoy, Simp, Ghosty are the other 3 guys we think. 04 and Abuzah ending up, of course, on FaZe with Simp and Drazah. So people wondered, okay, where's Nastie going to end up? Because I think, yeah, you might say Neptune was their best player last season, but Nastie was easily as good as 04 and aBeZy, I think. And yeah, maybe there were a couple of moments where he made a few mistakes, but you know, Nastie last year had a really good season, I thought, and was certainly on par with those other players I just mentioned from the team. But at the end of the day, you often find that there is one odd man out in these situations, and it seems like it's Nastie in terms of getting the big money bag offer for next season. Not to say that FaZe are probably paying something crazy, or maybe they are, I don't know, they moved to Vegas now, maybe they hit big on roulette, I don't know. And then they've got, of course, Gentlemates who actually have some money. Boston, they're certainly not paying what they used to pay, right? And they've gone for a more budget approach over the last season or so, and it looks like that's where Nastie's going to go. So, look, Awakening, for a couple of reasons, didn't have a great year at all, really, on Boston. Neither did Cammy. I mean, their numbers both weren't great, but I did feel like Cammy was slightly better integrated with that team, with that culture. You know, Shawnee's the coach, they're both Scottish. I felt like if there was one AR that was going to stay, it was probably always going to be Cammy. And you're not going to try and break up the Snoopy and Purge duo if you can avoid it, right? Maybe other people wanted Snoopy, he improved a lot last year. But Purge, I think, is a pretty great player as well. They worked very well off each other in the most recent season. Cammy was up and down, but was solid enough, I would say, as an AR most of the time. But they needed to try and upgrade somewhere. And Awakening for Nastie is a great move, right? On paper, it's a fantastic move. I really like it. I think that, you know, Nastie maybe is the flex, Cammy is the main AR. It's going to be a fast team, right? Cammy and Nastie are going to be a fast AR duo. Yeah, you might look at it and say, well, how much slaying is there really going to be? And look, I'm not expecting these teams or these ARs to be dropping crazy numbers. But if the team plays fast and on each other's level and understands what they're trying to get out of it, then they could be a serious threat next season. I don't think, you know, not like a championship threat, but this Boston team came top 3 at the World Championship, right? They knocked out Thieves a couple of times and it mattered the most. And I think this probably is just a pure upgrade if they make this happen for next season. So I think from Boston's perspective, this is pretty damn good. You keep a core that had some good success together last season. You bring in Nastie, who is an excellent player and has been, you know, I think Nastie's been a top 20 player pretty much near enough since he's come into the league. Certainly over the last few years, he's been, you know, probably top 5 in his role, top 5, top 6 in his role, and this season was really no exception. But I think from Nastie's perspective, yeah, this is a good team to go to, but would you prefer to go to Toronto for probably more money and to play for what should on paper be a more competitive team? Probably yes. So I think that's the surprising thing to me. Nastie, this is probably the best offer that he has, and it seems like a reasonably good offer, but it's a little bit surprising. I thought that Toronto would, at the very least, think about bringing in Nastie and say, okay, maybe it's time to move on from Insight, play a little bit of a faster pace. Yeah, it could have been something to think about. I don't mind Toronto giving Insight. I actually think it makes a lot of sense. But I think it's unfortunate that out of the quartet on Surge last year, Nastie probably finds himself in the spot where he's getting paid the least money out of all those guys and probably has the fewest chance to like win championships. So I think with Nastie, he's been a very solid player. He was on that Thieves team last year, the year before last, whatever you want to say. They came second at the World Cup. He had a ton of seconds last season. It would just be a shame to see Nastie finish his career, whenever that is, without winning at events, because he comes so close, right? So, you know, it's just a bit of a shame if he ends up on Boston, and then, you know, let's say his other teammates, O4 and Abuzah, they'll feel pretty confident they could win with FaZe next year. I think that Neptune will feel like he could maybe win with that Gentlemates team next year. I think Nastie, this team might have a Championship Sunday in them, Championship Sunday or 2, but maybe not that much more than that. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Nastie's numbers for the most recent season are as follows. Insight's numbers for the most recent season are as follows. Not exactly the same roles, not doing exactly the same thing, but there were questions on whether Toronto could go and do this, but as it stands, that does not look like it's going to be happening. So these are pretty much our rosters as we think we understand them. Nastie going to Boston is now a pretty big development, and we have a fair few of these teams, therefore, kind of not exactly locked in, but with some serious rumours involved. So there are kind of 3 teams now that we have serious question marks over, and really we have absolutely no idea what they are doing. We have no idea what Surge are doing. Some rumours that they're going to sign the Omit team, but questions on that. No idea what Cloud9 are doing, and Ravens probably won't exist in a couple of weeks. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.